Okay, so to complete this second part for this first week of our beginning to look at the CS50 course for SQL, what I have open is kind of what I showed before. I have the video open, I have the markdown open from the assignment itself, and I have my code space open. Right now I don't have a terminal up, right? I could definitely bring one up, and you should. Let's just do new terminal, and then notice I have two bash accounts. So in this case it looks identical. I could just kill one here, but let's start there. Okay, so I'm going to have you do a little setup work, but before that I just want to make sure when you watch the video you're going to see them go into SQLite, the subsystem. So what we've been working in so far, and I've shown you this I think the video before the last one was how to get into that subsystem, but I just want to show you again to give you that experience, right? So when I type SQLite 3 here, it drops me into that system, okay? And this prompt tells me I'm in that system as well. If you'll notice over here, the terminal now is in that subsystem. So we're running commands directly at SQLite. It's system directly, it's command line interface, okay? Now, over the course, we will learn how to save files into our editor and run them from there. But for this very beginning, I think this is a good way to start. Now, the way you're going to end up running this command is actually by opening the database. But before we can do that, we have to get the database, and that's what I'm going to show you. But I just wanted to remind here that when we're in this, right, I can do the Control D to then get out of the SQLite subsystem and then go back to my bash, okay? And then if I wanted to clear that, or I could also, if I'm in bash, I could type clear. But if I'm in SQLite and I want to clear the terminal, and these are things you're going to want to know, especially when you're working through this week's work. Okay, so with that set up, now let's actually go over here, because the first thing I'm going to have you do is in your code space, make sure your current directory is week 1 folder, okay? And then we'll come back in a minute and grab this command. So over here, the thing you'll notice is when you open up terminal, it's going to default into the base repo, right? And so if I wanted to have my week 1 folder open, there's two ways I could do it. One is, and I'll go ahead and show you both. I hit X over here. I right click in here and it'll say open an integrated terminal. Then notice how my terminal prompt, and that's what this is called, now has the W1 directory. And notice how my output of my or the terminal, showing the terminal, actually shows me that as well. The other way you can do this, and I think this is the way I typically do it, is I do change directory. This is just a very common command on the command line. And in this case, you would tell it the directory. So you could do W1. So this does the same thing, and it's just good the more you get used to working in the terminal itself, okay? So what you want to do, and by the way, the command you can also do if you're not sure what is the subdirectory structure, although the prompt here gives us a pretty good interface on that, okay? You can also do this command pwd, or you can also do ls. Pwd is the current working directory, or the current directory, and then the ls is a list of files. Okay, so if I was to back up one, which would take me back to the just the private, and when I would do ls, then I would see that README file, and I would see the W1. And you might wonder why I don't see the git ignore, and that's because it is in this sense a hidden file. And you might go, well, I can see it, but actually it is to the system. It is hidden, and that you can tell that by it being grayed out a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna again just clear this. I'm gonna come back over, open an integrated terminal, and that's where we will get started. So make sure for you have your current working directory as a W1. So coming back to this file, the first thing I'm going to have you do is just grab, and notice how this looks different. This is actually one long command. right? And it might look crazy to you, but in this case, it is going to go over to, and I'm going to show you this before we actually go do it. If I go to 8028 and I go to the files, because the files is a public repo that as I build the course, I'll be placing things in there. There's a file, here are the two README files, and here's the database file we need for you to do this work. And so this database file needs to now be in your current repo, your private repo in that W1 directory. Now there is actually other directories you could put it in as long as you know the reference, but just to make this week a little easier, we want this in our current directory. And you might think, right, we could right click, download it, and then just upload it into there. But that doesn't work so great for various reasons. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this command, which is a ccurl, which is basically copy URL with some parameters, and it's telling it the file name we're going to call it when it's copying it over and where it's coming from. So when we paste this in, that is going to go over to that location. Files main is the branch W1 long list, and it's going to look for this specific file, and then what it will create in the W1 will be this. So if I wanted it something different, I could name it that. So over here, I'm ready to go. I'm going to paste that in, and notice that's a really long command. Right? So what you will see when you hit enter here is it's actually going over at the command line. We're copying that over. It actually shows the speed it's doing it. It shows the total size that it got. I mean, you get some kind of fun details to look at here. But also, and I should have had my directory down, you can actually see now we have a new file in here. Okay, so that's cool. And then what we'll end up doing is actually opening this and opening it this database with the SQLite command that I'll show you. But before that, there's one other thing I want to show you, which is this. Actually, I'll come back to this one, which is I want to rename. And this is just good to know how to do because you've probably renamed files before and you thought, well, I'll just go over like the more common way people would probably think of this, because I want you to rename query to querying to match the video. I should have done that in the beginning. But you might just wonder, I could just go over here and rename that. Now you could, but it actually doesn't work as well in what we call the version control system. So there's a more specific command to the version control system that we're going to do. So I'm going to clear this first. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to grab this. So what this is going to, and let's actually just copy this, right? Come back over here to my code space, right? And then paste that. So what this is going to say is get, which is what we've been doing, get status, our get workflow, right? MV move, I don't remember what the V was, but querying.md, right, is going to be the new name, and this is the existing file. Okay, uh-oh. My bad, I'll fix that because what I realized is I'd been playing around with this earlier. So it's actually you need the existing name and then what you want the new name to be. Okay, so once you get this and you hit enter, then what happens is it does the rename here, and notice how we now have a different number. We've seen, you know, the add and what is it? The other one is when it is updated. So we just have a new attribute for the file, right? So if we were to do get status, we'd see, oh, okay, so now we have two changes. We have a change to be committed, which is this change, and then we have an untracked file. So this is a change and this is an untracked file. So now we want to go ahead and do, right, this get add star. Now what we've done is committed those in, or we've staged them in. Now we're going to commit them. And it might wonder, right, sometimes, and by the way, while I'm talking about this, I want to move over and show you, I do have a specific commit I want you to do here, right? So adding DB, long list DB added, and query MD renamed, right? So I'm going to use those, that specific one. There we go. Now, the reason mine's wrapping is because of the size of the screen. So now what I have is I have these two, cool, right? So in this case, again, I can keep working because I've done my commit. It's only at the end you need to do the git push that pushes it over to our repo so that you can submit. Okay, so let me show you the other thing you're going to need to do. And I'm going to clear the terminal. And then the other thing you're going to need to do is actually now, once you're in and writing SQL statements, I'm going to give you a way to see the output as you see when they do it, right? And we get that nice, if you see this, right? So this idea of this kind of boxed output. But let me just walk you through this because, and this is a preview of what you're about to get in there. Like, so in here, in the W1, I'd type SQLite 3, okay, and then I would type long list.db. So this is opening up the SQLite 3 subsystem with this specific file, okay. So now I'm in there in that specific file, okay, or with that specific file. So now, and you don't have to do this one with me because you're going to do this in the assignment. I just want to give you a little preview here. So select is what you're going to learn. Everything from, in this case, quotes, long list, okay? And in this case, you don't have to specify the DB because this is actually the table name, and then semicolon. Okay, so when you do this, all right, it's going to come out and it's going to look a bit different. But first, you get a list of all this. So that's pretty cool, to see that. That's really fun. Okay, but what I'm going to show you here is there's actually a fun thing you can do if you want that look. You can actually type this before you type your commands. So .mod box. Mode box is basically what you're telling the terminal to do. So in this case, I do the Control L to clear that. I'm still in the subsystem, right? I can tell that here, and I can tell that by my Active Directory. So now what I could do is do this, and nothing happens, but it's now in that mode. And by the way, the other thing I want to show you, and he doesn't talk about this, is you can use your up arrow, and up arrow will cycle through the commands you've done. Because sometimes you don't want to have to type them, although when you're starting to type SQL or any kind of code, it is good to get that muscle memory. But over time, you realize, hey, I've already written part of this. Why do I have to write the whole thing? So the up arrow will cycle through the commands. So now if I do that command now, I get that nice little output that you see there. I just want you to have that in case you're wondering, why doesn't mine look like that? Okay, so now let's actually talk about the work. Okay, we've already done the commit. So when you're doing the work here, you're following along, right, now that you've watched my setup video, and you're actually going to write these commands, right? And when you get to 1643, then you're going to stop and you're going to grab all the terminal, because basically now you're going to create what's called a proof of work file. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about here. So let me just show you what this looks like. Now I don't have all the commands that he goes through, but I'm just giving you the concept. So what you would do is you'd roll back up to the top, however, wherever you got started, right? And you could give me all of it. Just all I'm doing here is clicking and dragging and selecting. And if I hold my mouse down, and this could be a lot of content, and then I would just copy this, right? So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call that new file. Oh, very good. Notice what I just did. I was not in the current week 1 file, and the way I can tell this is because of the location. See that? That's actually not in the right location. So I'm going to hit escape here. I'm going to click on week 1, and then I'm going to do file. I'm going to build proof of work 1 txt, which creates a text file. Right? Now for a minute, I'm just going to minimize this so it's kind of out of the way. So now what this is going to do, I'm going to paste that in, and so what that gives me, or what this shows, is all the work that I did to show I did all the commands. This is how I did it. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Really what you're doing is saying that you followed along, you got the output. Maybe you used the mode command, it's not required, but you can already see how much nicer just using the mode command is. By the way, over time, as you learn more about the command line, which command line is really good to know because trust me, there'll be times in your career where you're going to want to have some comfort in working in the command line. All right, so then when you stop, you create your file, then you'll do your version control, right? Because in this case, when you're doing your version control, and let me just go ahead for now, because one thing I can do that's kind of fun, and I'm going to go ahead and close this file out. Oh, I must also drop my terminal somehow so I can bring it back. I really should get the keyboard shortcut for that one. It's probably a better one to terminal. There we go, new terminal. Okay. So notice how I still have my SQLite terminal here. I have a new bash one here I did from the new open. I had the other one hanging out. So if I was to do a get status, right, I would see now I have that one file. So in this case, that would be what you're committing. So then on the next one, you're going to listen to, in this case, you're going to update, in this case, your new file called query.md. You give it whatever heading you want. I'll probably start being more specific about headings starting next week, right? And that commit, so this one is not any content, not any of the commands. This is just really talking about, these are really good questions in here, you know, and answer the ones that were provided and ask some of your own would be a great way to do that. So then you commit that, and then you'll do some more. So you'll end up doing another round starting at 19, going to 21, and you'll call this POW2, okay? So proof of work 2, and then you'll commit that, and then you'll give me your commit history for this one, which I showed you last time, so I'm not going to show you again. I did update the grading here to reflect the files. So what I would expect to see in those two text files is the output that you did those commands. Just FYI, before we leave, there are other ways for sure to grab that output besides what we're showing here, okay? And I'm trying to start it definitely from a beginner standpoint. If you know other commands, as long as they're there, as long as all the work is there, I'm cool with that as well. This is just a way I thought, well, it'd be pretty, hopefully easy, and just something that you may want to do on your own anyway. If I was you, I would also update this markdown file with some of these select statements and the limits and how they work, because when you go to do the problem sets, it'll be helpful to have one place for you to look at documentation. Okay, so I didn't walk you through it, but what you will do here, like I said before, is provide your commit history for your W1. So what should I see? I should see 3 commits. I should see a rename file. I should see a database file. And then I should see the 2 new files. So there'll be quite a few things on this commit history added to what you had already done from the first one. I hope you have fun. Reach out if you need any help.